Hi, I'm Paloma Faith and I'm great company. I don't know anything about you.
That's good though, I think. If you met me for the first time, what would you think I was?
Well, you've already, just before we started, you said that you're on Made in Chelsea, so now I know you're a posh boy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Could have been
so
an
that
extra.
means that there's going to be a modicum of resentment from the beginning.
Oh, good.
Just like...
Well...
But because it was a reality TV show, you compensated, because that's tacky as hell, so you brought yourself down a notch.
Yeah. No, I heard that when you went for a record deal and you met the person, I think this is the story, but you can say it, you met the person who was head of the record label and they were on their phone too much, and so you told them to fuck off.
No, I told them I wasn't going to play any music until they stopped texting.
Wait, can you tell me the story? So what happened?
Well, they came for a showcase they'd asked me to do, and then he was just on his phone while I was singing, and then I just stopped, and I was like, he looked up and he said, why have you stopped? And I said, because I think it's rude that not just me, but all these musicians are like playing to you and we're all doing it and you're just looking at your phone. I just find it rude. And you're the one who asked me to do this, so I don't need to be here. He went, oh, okay, sorry. And I said, well, we'll start when you finish your message. And then he was like, okay. And I said, sorry, but I'm going to start from the beginning. And then he was like, okay. Because he'd already done 2 songs. So I started the whole thing again. And then he was like, okay, it was a bit on the back foot. And then he said, you sound like Amy Winehouse. What are you going to do about it? This was back then. Mm. And I said, well, think about these. And I named like 6 indie white boy bands that all sounded the same to me. And I said, well, there's 6 of them and they all look and sound the same to me. So what are you going to do about that? And he was like, do you want this? And I said, not really. I'm quite happy in my life. I was really content where I was at because I enjoyed the climbing. I didn't want to ever feel indebted, like it's me that I want to achieve it myself. I don't want to feel indebted or dependent on somebody else helping me. So anyway, he left and he was like, wow, this girl's full on. And then 9 months later, he emailed me and said, I'm just emailing you to say that I've seen so many bands, so many musicians in the last 9 months, and none of them have been as interesting as you. And you're just your whole being, like you're a star, and I want to sign you. And I just wrote back, sorry, who is this? But then that was the person who ended up signing me. My manager called me, was like, he's called me and he said you're giving him a hard time.
That's amazing. I heard a rumor that you never had any training in singing.
No. But I have since.
It was obviously this music was in you. Growing up, did you just feel like you just had music within you? Were you always writing diaries? Were you writing things down?
I do have diaries from really young, but also my dad was a jazz fanatic and his house was full of vinyl. So every week it was all alphabeticalised, but when I went to his house, he'd be like, pick a letter, and then we'd do that letter. But most of it wasn't vocals, it was mostly instrumental jazz. But I had all of that and sort of in the background of my upbringing. And he was so fanatical about it and obsessed. And then my mum was more into 60s vocalists and stuff.
So that's where it all came from.
But I think that the listening to so much instrumental music all the time put it in me.
Did you have the confidence to go and start singing when you were younger?
No, I was asked to because somebody overheard me singing while sweeping glass in a bar that I worked in. I was singing along with Erykah Badu album that was on.
And then what happened from there?
Then he just said, would you like to write something together? And I was like, yeah, well, I write poetry because I was always really into writing poetry.
Yeah.
And so then we did some appalling songwriting together, really bad, embarrassing.
Do you still have some of the stuff?
Yeah.
That's so great.
then I sort of left it for a bit, and then I was in a bar. I worked in another bar later down the line, and I was quite into dressing in vintage clothes. And these guys were like, "You want to be in our band? We're doing like a rock and roll band." And then I just said, "Okay." You don't even know if I can sing. They said, "We don't even care." So I did that for a bit. That was all covers. I don't really know how it happened. It's sort of an accident. But I think a lot of, there's a documentary that was made about like me touring as a mum. But in that, I'd say I think a lot of it might have been towards like getting some acknowledgement or validation from my dad.
Yeah.
Because like I went on to do it, all the stuff he was in awe of.
It was his dream, and then you started living it.
And he was so critical of me anyway. And then like, you know, I remember like doing these big jazz orchestra things and singing all these standard songs at the Barbican and then the Royal Albert Hall and on the proms, and all of it's just like, screw you. Success is the best revenge.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's a funny thing about success, right? Which is where people always, I think with highly successful people like yourself, sometimes...
I don't feel highly successful.
Yeah, but that's what I was going to say. But why don't you? You're so successful.
Yeah, but there's so many people who've done better than me.
But that's comparing yourself, and that's wrong.
Yeah, but I look at them and go, well, I've got to do better.
Yeah, but that's comparing, and that's not a... Compare it if you start...
I've always compared. Like, that's how I mean, when I was at school, I would sit next to the cleverest person in every class. I'd just sit next to them and like be like, I'm sitting next to you and I'm going to be better than you. And that's how I did it. And I ended up, it worked. I'd sit next to them, I'd sort of learn their ways, I'd learn how to do them, and then I'd do better than that.
But that's so
that
bad competitive.
It's
not. That's just highly competitive as well. That means you're very competitive. But also that does mean, unfortunately, just to put it out there, is that you're never probably going to be satisfied. Because
no, I know I'm not. I've made peace with that.
You've made peace with that.
I'm never going to be satisfied.
How do you make peace with that? Because that's a struggle that loads of that, and especially because of social media now, we're constantly comparing ourselves to everyone.
You just keep going and going and climbing until you die. My ambition is live life to the fullest. Like, keep going. Always put the most amount of energy into everything, and do your personal best at all things. You might not ever feel satisfied, and if you were, that would be a bit like, what's the point of carrying on living then? What, just peace and serenity? It's not really appealing to me. I want to just keep going and like have those highs and lows and highs and lows. Like, I think I like it.
Is it because you're scared that it's going to go?
Probably.
But you know it won't.
I don't know that, no.
I think that's so...
every time I get towards putting an album out, I think this is the end.
Because you think people won't like it?
Yeah, I think people won't buy it, they won't like it. I'm always asking my label if I'm going to get dropped. But now everyone's independent, so it's quite cool if you get dropped, so I'm okay with that now.
Where does that confidence come from, though?
It's to do with the fact that my idea of success is different to what other people's are.
Mm-hmm. So what's your idea of success?
It's to do with achieving something for myself, first of all. And it's to do with bettering myself or achieving things that I didn't think were imaginable for myself. Mm. And I think I've always been hyper-aware that happiness is fleeting. But something that gives me more, maybe more fleeting moments of happiness than other things.
Do you think happiness is fleeting, though?
Yeah.
But does it need to be fleeting?
It's always going to be fleeting. That's the human condition. You go up and down and up and down. And as like coming from the perspective now you're in of like somebody who's just got married, I would say like you hold on to it. But when you know, speak to people whose marriages have lasted, they all say the same thing. You have to fall in love over and over again. Like you will fall out of love with each other, but it's about finding your way back to each other again that makes it work. And you will be unhappy. It's inevitable.
Yeah.
But you'll get back to it. And as long as you like do that together and don't separate to do it, I think it will work.
You're right. That's great advice. I think you're right. I think sometimes there's this sort of idealistic idea of life that we're always going to be happy and roses and all these different things. And then someone told me once, I actually chatted to them on the podcast, and they said to me, "Oh, my favorite quote is 'This too shall pass.'" And I was like, "Oh my God, that's amazing." He said, "Well, it is.
It applies to both.
Yeah.
Positive and negative."
And he said, because the saying is, a guy went to a jeweler and said, "Can you make a jewel that will make a sick man well, a well man sick, a happy man sad, and a sad man happy?" So the guy went away and made this jewel, and on it was written, "This too shall pass."
Yeah.
And it's true, and I never thought about it the other way. I just
it's
thought...
the same with like success. Like you might be rewarded or something superficially, but tomorrow is another day. You can't look at it. You have to look at both success and failure with the same contempt almost.
Blake weirdly always talks about in his 2 poems, he talks about the innocence and experience and how experience destroys innocence, which is so true. And weirdly enough, that's why Peter Pan is one of my heroes, is because he liked that innocence of being like, he didn't want to live in this world of Hook and things like that.
It'd be awful to be married to, though, wouldn't
Yeah, terrible. I think, yeah. Imagine being married to me, just wanting to be a little boy forever.
No, I just got out of that thing.
But do you think when you were innocent, when you were naive to all of this world and you didn't have the success you have now, do you think that was a happier time for you because you didn't have the expectations you have now? Your 6th album, you really wanted to do well. And so before it was just like, oh, I don't have anything to compare it to. So it doesn't really matter what happens.
Yeah, I'm more afraid of like it not doing well than I was then. Then I was just like, this is a funny story. The day I got a record deal and then flopped, fell on my face. That would have been funny. That if you've done like had lots of successes and then suddenly you flop, that's terrifying. People always talk about the difficult second album. It's like, I'm on album 6. How difficult is that?
You and I have more things in common than you realise.
What?
I went to Leeds University and you went to the dance college.
Yeah.
How was that for you?
It was the worst thing that's ever happened to me.
Why?
It was terrible. Well, they were really preoccupied with like the physical technique and everything. It was really strict. All the cliches, like checking what I was eating, kicking my leg into the splits, all that abuse. And they used to send my academic work away to be invigilated at Leeds University because they couldn't understand it. So I used to have this like slightly like difficult relationship because they'd be like, you didn't write this. It sounds like something that would be published.
They used to say that to you?
Yeah, and I'd be like, well, I did write it. But because I was always really academic, but they were like, why'd you go to this college if you can write like that? Basically implying that dancers are all people who didn't have an option because they were too stupid to do anything else, which isn't true. But yeah, I guess I've faced a lot of reverse prejudice in my life. So it's terrible of me to start this podcast by saying, oh, you're posh and I've judged you. Because basically,
I like it. I like you did that.
You like it because posh people like a little bit of slap in the face from commoners, don't they? It's like fetish. It's fetishy. Bend over. But like, but no, I think I've had the opposite. So I've been in like academic situations and been sort of ill judged because my accent, but I'm quite sort of, yeah, I've always been, quite academic.
But maybe it's because, how do you respond to rules? Because I feel like
I hate them. Do you?
I hate them.
But I think that's something to do with the ADHD because we both got ADHD.
What is about rules that you dislike?
I dislike feeling that somebody, that I don't have my own agency. That somebody might control anything about me. Like I don't mind it when somebody presents a rule to me as if it was my decision. Like I don't mind that. 'Cause I'm like, yeah, I wanted to. But if someone's like, I told you to do that, then you did it, I just get so infuriated. How do you feel?
Yeah, I think I'm so similar to that. So I went to a boarding school from 8 years old.
No, darling.
No, but
That was awful.
do you know what?
Don't drop the soap.
No, do you know what we used to do? Should I tell you this? We used to all have showers and communal showers, and I went
Don't. This is censored.
we were in an all-boys school, and what we used to do is we used to rub soap on ourselves
And each other.
and then
And get a good lather.
and then press against
There
each
are
other.
so many people masturbating over this podcast right now. You don't even understand.
This is no what I used
Just
to.
imagining you lathering with the boys.
We used to put soap on ourselves and then press ourselves together and then move away and create a really big bubble.
But that was the innocent perspective.
Completely innocent. 8 years old, 9 years old, doing that with just my friends, making bubbles in the shower. But going to a boarding school from 8 years old, it was so many rules and I felt so trapped. And because of those rules in place, that's why I wanted to go against it. So there must have been something in your life maybe that rules were put upon you and you're like, I just don't want this. Because how did you learn about rules? Was your mum quite strict?
My mum brought me up saying rules are made to be broken. So my mum's quite naughty, and I went to like a proper inner London state school, and all the teachers were socialists, and they were all like, screw the system, screw the government. And that was the environment I grew up in, like question everything, question authority. And the only time that they could ever enforce any discipline in our school, because that was kind of like the whole thing of it, was the police would come. No teachers had to do it. Police would just be there every single day.
Do you think that your attitude towards kind of rules and things like that that's kind of your success in music? Because you've kind of done what you've wanted to do.
Yeah, I think so. But also it's not conscious because I've never really experienced rules. Like I always say, I think I'd cope really badly, for example, if I, for whatever reason, ends up in jail, because I have never experienced somebody telling me what to do before, really.
So
like,
no authority whatsoever?
No. But like reasoning, so my mum I was very disciplined. I was very good as a kid. Honestly, this is a disclaimer and people are always shocked. I've never done any drugs. I've never been that drunk. I'm not really a rebel in that sense because I didn't have anything to rebel against. I didn't have to do it because it was all about just reasoning. Like the way I was disciplined, the reason why I behaved was never because it was what I'd been told to do. It was like, no, but if you do that, you might hurt yourself. Oh, that makes sense to me. Like proper open dialogue. And I've got 2 kids now, and I do that with my kids. I say, well, you can do it if you want, but my concern is you might graze your knee or you might feel so full up you don't eat anything nice and then you might get ill.
But there are some times, I suppose, when in any sort of business, or especially with your career, which is you've just done so much, and I can imagine that people are always trying to, have you do different things with you. At some point, you do have to put down rules, right? You have to, or things aren't done, and that must frustrate you. Then, so then how do you?
What I do is tend to try and get a sort of grasp on whether this is something that I can influence as in a change, would they learn the way I would want it to be done, or is it someone that just will never do it and then I have to do the horrible firing thing, which I hate doing. I've fired people crying before, just I'm so sorry.
So wait, so how, this is okay, hang on a second. So
But that's the same as relationship.
Yeah, true. It is the same.
Sometimes it's you're not compatible, and it's sad when it breaks up and doesn't work. But you can see that it's just never going to be right or make you both happy. You have to say goodbye to it. It's the same with work. It's devastating because you're so disappointed. Naturally, there are qualities about that person you really like.
How do you fire someone? So if you were going to fire me right now,
I tend to now get to the point now where I have learned over time that I shouldn't get too close first, so somebody else can do it. But in the early days, I got so close to everyone because I've got this weird thing where I want to know everyone's life story and then I get them to tell me their problems and stuff. And then I sort of take them on. I really feel compelled to help. That's the way I am naturally.
But you have that energy, that's why.
And so management are always, I'm like, what's your trauma? Let's trauma bond to everyone. And management are now like, right, just don't let them speak to Paloma for more than 10 minutes because it ends up with her crying and feeling bad or like overpaying to say sorry for like the job not working out or whatever. Like, let me just give you some money to say sorry.
But you definitely, you definitely have that. But we haven't met before. But you have that really warm. And I'm not just saying this because you're sitting on. Because I wouldn't say it otherwise. But you do have this warm aura, right? So when I met you outside and you were sitting on the sofa, you immediately get up and hug. Before we even met, you said you're a posh boy, and that's very endearing. That's really but it's nice, right? There's no like.
Some people might hate it. It's Marmite, isn't it?
But some people.
But I have to say, like, disclaimer, that if I give people a hard time, it's usually like very light, but it's nowhere near as much of a hard time as I give myself internally.
Really?
So when I say like, oh, you're a posh boy, I don't think you'll get offended because like my inner voice is just appalling. It's such a bully. So I think he can handle that. It's nothing compared to what I'm saying to myself. Which I think is what's driven me creatively and to achieve, because nothing's ever enough.
They always say that you're either I think it's pulling yourself or you're being dragged towards something. So something, typically the reason why a lot of people are successful, especially in the sort of entertainment industry, is because something is dragging them towards that. Something in their past has either injured them or hurt them, or they don't feel worthy enough or good enough or looking for validation. And I definitely know for me doing a reality show, the reason I did a reality show is because I wanted to be famous. I thought being famous was going to be the funnest thing in the world.
And then you found out
it wasn't
so much.
Not so much. Pretty quickly. And then I was doing a reality show. And reality shows, are... it's a reality show about being posh. But then my problem was that it was
for people to fetishize something that the 1% get to experience.
Completely. So then you're on a television show about being posh, and you've done it because you want to become famous or whatever it is, and then you have to try and make that into a career because you can't go and get a normal job after that. So that was an issue. But why do you think then?
You could get a normal job, though.
You could, yes.
My mum's always telling me I need to train to be a teacher. She's like, you've had kids, you've done the pop star thing, go and do a PGCE, because then you can have the same holidays as your kids. And I'm like, okay, considering it, just might put one more record out.
Do you think you're lovable?
Very.
But that's great. That's a really positive thing, because sometimes...
But I also think I'm really despisable. But I'm just like...
No, you're not despisable.
In my life, I've had a lot
You're opinionated. I've
had an experience of people being really like, I love her, and I've had the opposite. And I quite like that, because it would be awful if you went into a room and people were like, don't really remember her. I'd rather they were just like, she's awful.
Do you think for you, like, so with your new album, could you obviously put your heart and soul into your music? Mm-hmm. Do you think for you that is your one place that kind of never, always is supporting you, always is there to help you, always is never backing out? That is your place of comfort. So when you want to have a sounding board, when you want to release all of these emotions, you can put it into an album and write it.
Yeah, it's therapeutic. It's cathartic. Absolutely. But I also do a lot of actual therapy as well, and I find that important. Like, I notice when I don't go for a while that I need it. But I don't think anger's a negative emotion either, because I was raised to believe anger was a negative emotion. And my mum, when I was growing up, was always like, if I hit something or threw something, she'd be like, I can't believe you. You're just like your father, because that was like the biggest insult. And because my dad's a very angry man.
Why was that the biggest insult?
Because he's a very angry man and it didn't get him anywhere. But I've also got something like, I get stress-related alopecia, and I think all of that's like, and it's always emotional. If I'm stressed at work, my hair doesn't fall out. But if it's emotional, my hair starts falling out. And it's something to do with like the body kind of like eating itself if you don't release those feelings. So it's really important that you do. With
writing this recent album, when you finish it and you put it out there, is there a sense of calm? Is there a sense of completion? Do you have that when you write your music? And especially when you complete it, or is there a sense of sadness when you complete it because then you can't go back into that place? Because actually there's comfort being in trauma sometimes.
Well, just because you finished the album doesn't mean the trauma's gone away.
No, it doesn't, for sure.
But I think in the past, up till so my first 5 albums were all albums that I felt like I'd put something to bed with. But I think this is ongoing navigation because we have children together, and that's what makes this a different type of heartbreak album, because the heartbreak will be forever, and the navigation of our relationship changing shape will be forever, probably till we die. You can't really let go of somebody you've got kids with. And some people sort of, just because you don't see them, some people never speak again, and they're still very present because you look at your kids and you see that person in your kids, or they come back from visiting your ex-partner and they're doing the mannerisms, or they've got opinions that you don't agree with that are their opinions or whatever. But in my case, it's even harder, I think, in a way, because we really like each other a lot and we're really close and we still love each other, and that makes it confusing.
That's really sad.
So it's sort of heartbreaking every time we see each other.
That makes me sad.
Yeah. It is sad.
Because if you were telling me and I was a friend of yours, I'd be like, but hang on a second, I can see you getting emotional now, because it makes me upset, because you have so much love to give. Obviously you want to be looked after. No, it's so, because you're obviously
it's just very raw because of the kids.
Of course it is. And you're obviously such a great mum, and you want to make sure your kids are okay, and so you got that pressure, and then you also still love your partner, and sometimes you're just like in life, well, why the fuck hasn't this worked out? Like that, fuck's sake, I love you and you love me.
But I say on the album, there's a spoken bit where I say, I know it's my fault. And then it does this mantra. It's all right, thanks. It does this mantra says there's nothing more human than failure over and over again. And it's true.
Yeah, it is true. We have to fail, right? And that's what happens. I sort of realised that in this like weird game called life, which, by the way, I thought all the time that I'd open a door and I'd find all the answers, and you just never do. And that's what's kind of scary about life. But we constantly have to make mistakes. Yeah. And falling in love and getting married, and then that maybe not working out isn't bad on you. That's just part of life sometimes, and it's not even a failure. It's just a part of what happens. And I think maybe you're giving yourself too much of a hard time. It feels like. I think you are.
Yeah, but saying that to me is like telling me not to be me.
I know it is. I know it is. Do you find it hard to listen to the album?
There's one song on it that I can't listen to, and I don't think I'll play live, called Divorce, and I just get too upset
because it's just too much.
I don't think I could sing it.
Really? So then why did you put it on the album?
Because it's the most truthful one. It's basically all the stuff that's just made me get emotional now in a song. Oh my God. And it's got my kids' voices in it.
Really?
Yeah. So as soon as I hear them at the beginning, it's like I've recorded them playing in the garden, I just start crying. I just hear them and then I'm like, one chord.
Really?
Yeah.
But that's kind of special at the same time.
Yeah, maybe I need to like toughen up a bit on tour and just...
You've got to perform that live. Are you kidding me? That's going to be amazing. How do you deal with heartbreak?
I don't know, not very well. I think you have to go through it though, and you've got to sort of face your feelings. I think in the past, this is what I've learned from this one. In the past, I always dealt with it by probably pushing it to one side and filling that void with another person almost immediately.
Really? So you would replace straight away?
Not straight away, but very quickly. And now I've got children. It doesn't work. It doesn't sit right. I've tried a bit of dating. I've tried some stuff, and it doesn't work, because when you've got children, the moment you know that someone's not right for you, you just can't see them. Like, that they're not going to make you happy, or, you know, if they're going to be damaging to you. Because if I'm miserable, my kids experience it. And I notice myself as well being like, if I'm upset or stressed about something with someone, and then I'll be like maybe more quicker to snap with my kids. Like, what do you do? Why do you keep asking me? Well, they go, Mama, Mama, Mama. And you're like, what? Whereas normally you'll just be like, yes, love. Whatever, like, I don't know. So I have to be careful. So I don't think my old habits work anymore. So I'm sort of like learning. It sounds so cliche, but as trying to have a relationship with myself. I don't know if I've ever had one.
They always say that heartbreak is like grief, and you go through 7 stages. And the 7 stages are shock, denial, pain, guilt, anger, bargaining, depression, and then an upwards turn, and it sort of gets towards acceptance. If you had to say which...
That's what my album's about, by the way, all the stages of grief.
That's what it's...
So it's chronological, but it goes through all those stages. So each song represents those stages.
Can I ask a personal question? Why do you think it didn't work out? You're 10 years together. You have 2 beautiful kids.
Yeah.
And relationships I get are hard. Doesn't matter how new or how old they are. But why don't you think it worked?
Resentment, because I think that I did too much. I felt I contributed more to the whole setup than I was. I didn't feel like I was matched in my contribution, and over time that took its toll, and the resentment built. There was a lot of, like, I won't go into the details, but there's a lot of disparity, I think, I felt there was between what I put into it and him.
In terms of love, in terms of everything.
Not love. I think we were equal on that. Practically, I think, more.
And that's sometimes hard, but then did you communicate that? Because sometimes I think in relationships, maybe that's not communicated. So I've definitely felt in relationships before where I felt a certain way, but I've never communicated that.
Yeah, I did communicate it, but I do think as well, like, it was, in the end, it becomes about accepting that, like, you can't turn someone into something else. Like, for example, I'm just quite an ambitious, proactive person. But if somebody's not ambitious and proactive, I can't make them into that. I have to accept who they are. That's what love is. So you sort of have to be okay with who they are and what they're bringing.
Do you think in relationships sometimes that we change and then the other person doesn't potentially change with you?
Yeah.
And then that becomes a problem, right? Because...
Well, I think having children was a huge shift for me, because I have always been quite maternal and, like, enjoyed that role. But then as soon as I had small babies, I didn't, and this is quite common in relationships, I didn't have the capacity even to, like, mother anybody other than the baby or the next baby. Didn't want to mother the partner or the friends. Like, I had friends who got upset with me as well. Because
you just put so much love and everything in to the baby.
Well, they were just like, you don't give me attention like you used to. Just like, well, hold fire for a second. Like, wait till my children are over the age of 10.
And then you can go back.
I'll have a decade of that. I didn't want to, like, take that away from them. But I think that takes its toll. And I think that's a big shift. You know, like, lots of people say superficial things about having kids and, like, well, she never wanted to have sex with me anymore, or, like, well, she just, like, wasn't as kind to me, or she was always ratty or whatever. But I don't think there's enough acknowledgement for, like, the sheer amount of pressure or work that women do when they become mothers. And I do believe, and I talk about this a lot, that feminism has kind of started something for us and abandoned us halfway through, because we've been given this sort of like pseudo, what I think is a patriarchal idea of equality, which basically means that we're all doing 3 people's jobs and we're tired and irritable, and it's understandable. We're just done. And like,
but explain that more. What do you mean by 3 people's jobs?
Well, I'm doing a full-time work breadwinner in my
in your situation, yeah.
And I am, making great stuff happen. Like, kind of feel like responsible for exciting things to happen for my family.
Yeah.
Holidays, like events, like painting, whatever they do, like Play-Doh, play dates, buying the school uniform, doing the supermarket shop. Like, it's so much, this sort of like invisible, unspoken labour that you do as a mother. And so there's that. And then there's like, on top of that, like being there for your children, being like a source of like moral growth and like emotional support and all of that. It's so much, and I think that it's taken for granted by society, like the mother, and everyone's always like, oh, their mum, or will mum be coming? Like, you don't even realise until it happens to you that everyone's just like the mum. And nobody goes dad, and if he's involved, they go, oh, you're so lucky. And women even say it about their bloody partners, like, I'm really lucky because my partner's a stay-at-home dad. There is so much difference between a stay-at-home dad and a stay-at-home mum. Like, there is so much difference between a working mum and a working dad. It's not fair.
But break that down quickly, just so...
So a working mum goes to work, comes home, and the kids are immediately her full responsibility. Whether she likes it or not, they're obsessed with their mum. I love it, but it's true.
Yeah.
Like, a working man might come home, sit down on the sofa, the kids aren't bothered, they're already doing something else, and they're like, dad's gone to work, dad, hello, daddy, not like immediately, can you do this for me? Can you do this for me? Can you do this for me? As soon as he walks in the door, like, they are like that with a working mum. And then the same with the stay-at-home mums. It's incessant. You get that all day. It's like, can I have my favourite food? Can I do this? And, oh, the kid's up all night with a temperature. They want their mum. And there are obviously exceptions. Of course there are, because there always is for every single rule. But in general, it isn't fair. And...
But do you think that's...
We're burning out. That was my last conclusion.
What emotion do you find most comfortable being in?
Oh, most comfortable?
Yeah.
Hysteria, probably.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I just like laugh at everything. That's like my coping strategy. If I'm alone too much, it's dangerous.
Why?
Because I go to like places in my mind that are a bit self-destructive and sad. And I think, I don't know, I think there's a lot of stuff, now, like in this kind of like social media age, where people are really encouraged to kind of indulge in sort of psychological cliches and platitudes in these kind of minutiae forms, like just a self-help quote or whatever. And I think it's dangerous because culturally now we're encouraged to almost resolve ourselves from responsibility. Now I've got like an issue with hyper responsibility, so I'm really responsible for everyone. I naturally do it. I want to help people. I want to like, it's all of consequence, like me asking people about their backstory. It's all like I'm always compelled to help people, understand them, connect with them, make them feel better. And I think that I'm hyper responsible, so I always think, if things go wrong, what did I do to make that go wrong? What was my part in it?
You blame yourself.
Well,
all the time.
I think it's always partially us. I think it's every single situation we're ever in, even if it's the worst thing, will be partially us. And we're the only
But not always. Because
or how you handled it. So I've done this amazing type of therapy called CAT therapy, cognitive analytic therapy.
Yeah.
And it speaks about the rule of thirds.
Mm-hmm.
So a third of it is you, a third of it is the other person, and a third of it is stuff you absolutely have no control over, like the weather or a circumstance that you get plunged into or whatever. So that's sort of like how responsibility should be divided up in a healthy way.
But hang on a second. But this is not everything you're involved with can relate to you, or you have a part in it for sure, right? So
But that's the part. If you talk about, say, you're about to say something like, what if you're brought up in a home as a child that
divorce, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Or no, not something
no, but
traumatic
that's
as
the
that.
that's the third of you can't control.
But you're saying that
But how you respond to it, you can control. How much you let it affect you and your future life and your future relationships is something you can control or take responsibility for. Like, I'm a child of divorce and I do loads of therapy. I mean, that's not my only trauma. I've got a million. In fact, look at the list of all the horrible things that can happen, and I've had a connection to all of them. But I think when I talk about like this, my concern about this sort of culture of like sort of psychology and all of that is like it sort of encourages toxic self-pity. I don't think that's good. Sounds quite sort of like somebody who'd send you to boarding school would say that, doesn't it? But I think all these messages that my algorithm at the moment, I've been blocking them all because I don't think it's good for me.
Yeah.
My algorithm's constantly telling me like nothing's my fault and it's all them, toxic man and da-da-da. And I'm just like, oh my God, I chose to go out with that person.
What would you say is the happiest period of your life?
I don't think happiness is necessarily like a feeling of elation. I think it's about growth. So sometimes awful things can happen where you grow so much that that's happy because it leads you on to something better. But I think probably it's strange, but like having my kids has been the most brilliant thing that's ever happened to me. But it didn't manifest in the way I thought it was. I thought I'd hold my babies in my arms and be like, I am so happy. But I wasn't. I was really depressed for a long time. I had postpartum depression for like 2 years after both, I'd say. And it was so sad and so lonely, both times actually. But then like this winter, I just went on a little holiday for the first time ever on my own with my 2 children. And like no friends, no help with the kids, like nothing, no partner, and I just went by myself. And I came back and everyone was like, how was it? And I was like, it was the happiest and most rested I've been since the birth of my first child. I felt really like I'd experienced the rewards of all of that, like so happy to be okay with just being accepting myself and where I was at, like in the moment, present, not looking for something more, not looking back on what has happened and couldn't let go or whatever it is we all do to kill ourselves. Basically, I was just really happy that I've got these 2 amazing children.
That's amazing. My mum always says to me that when my parents got divorced, it was me, my brother and my little sister. And it was snowing outside and she got us all into a bedroom. We all just slept in the same bed together. She said it was the happiest moment ever she had. Because it was just like, oh, I've got this team.
Little pack.
And that's amazing.
Yeah, feel lucky.
When you go through something like depression like that, it's quite hard sometimes to see the end point.
Well, I didn't know I was in it. I think when you've got real mental illness, you're not really that aware of it.
But you feel emotion. You're feeling an emotion, right?
Yeah, but I just associated it because of having the babies with like not being a good parent.
Always blaming yourself.
Yeah. And it wasn't that in hindsight.
No, of course it's not. It's hormones and everything just going crazy. But what's so great about you, Paloma, is that you're so happy to talk about these things. I know so many people aren't. So many people are so nervous to say that or worried to say that, but you're not. And you're in a position of such, you're so in the public eye that actually, surely, as an individual, you should be more scared to talk about stuff things like. But you're just like, no, I don't mind talking about it. You're not scared. It's funny. You're almost scared of what people think, but actually, you're totally not scared of what people think either. I'd
rather that they thought bad things about me based on the truth rather than like that they've imagined who I am. Like if I was false and they hated me, that would feel awful. But if I'm exactly who I am and people hate me, then it's better because they hate the real version of me.
We end the podcast by asking 8 questions. It's quick fire. You can be as honest as you want.
Okay.
But before we go into that, when are you going to go touring? When is it going to happen? When can people come and listen to you and see you and enjoy everything that you put into it?
So February 16th, the drop for The Glorification of Sadness. And then I'm on tour of the UK all of April. And I've got some summer festivals and I'm doing some European dates as well.
Do you love it when you're on tour?
I love being on stage. It's the only time I'm not anxious.
Really?
Yeah. In life, I'm always anxious, but on stage, I'm never anxious. I just think this is it. All that exists is this moment.
Are you ready for your 8 questions?
Suck it to me.
Okay, here we go. What's a saying or phrase that always makes you smile or cheers you up?
Okay, it's one from my new song. I'm not a good girl, I'm a bad woman. It's one of my lyrics.
That's quite boss. I like that a lot. Is that your favourite lyric?
It is now that my 2-year-old goes up to every single person she sees and says, I'm a bad woman. Just makes me laugh.
Best compliment anyone's ever given you?
I can't think of the actual compliment, but I think when somebody went on Facebook once and wrote a story about how they'd met me before I was famous and how kind I was to them. So I think being praised for being kind is probably the best compliment.
Kindness is the greatest thing, 100%. What scares you most about yourself?
My decision-making abilities.
Why?
I just always second guess.
I honestly, I'm not putting loads of similarities we have. Loads.
You're like, I'm you, you're me.
You.
Twin flames.
Yes. Yes. Dangerous though.
I'm starting a religious cult.
I'm in.
Join in.
In.
You just have to sign this PayPal agreement.
When was the last time you cried and why?
Just now, because you asked me some questions that were a bit close to the surface, and I'm 2 days before starting my period as well, so not good.
What's something you can't let go of?
Some sort of I think it's something to do with maybe rectifying my relationship with my father, but it might not be with him, but I think I try and rectify it with other relationships. And it's always obsessive.
It's a great answer. What's something you'd be embarrassed for people to know you like or want?
I find it hard to be embarrassed.
Have you ever been embarrassed?
Probably, but I don't think it's something I hold on to, or it's probably an unusual thing. It's so embarrassing. I think it's usually to do with things where I've slipped up on my political correctness or something. I'd be embarrassed about only that kind of thing.
What turns you off?
Sexually, when people go, you like that, don't you? It's like, fuck off. I'll let you know. So overconfident.
Mine's no talking, lights off. Completely dark.
Let's not discuss it.
Go. What turns you on?
People who understand that foreplay is more about what you talk about for the whole day and how you treat each other for the whole day. It's not just spit on your fingers and rub.
That is unbelievable. What do you like most about yourself?
I think have the ability to make people feel good, like they had a nice time.
You definitely have that, for sure.
Thanks.
You really do. I said that.
I've never really said it about myself, but my mum keeps texting me, remember, you've got this ability to make people, like, because I've been having some personal issues, and she keeps saying, like, remember, that's your skill, that's your magic power. So I'm just trying to say it out loud.
Do you believe that in yourself, though, now?
Well, sometimes.
You must do.
Yeah, not every single person, but I think, yeah. I'm really good at first impressions, terrible in the long term.
Okay, and the bonus one, what is your favourite swear word?
Cunt.
I saw the greatest time I think you've ever used that is when you...
Rishi Sunak.
What happened?
It's my most popular tweet I've ever done.
Can you explain what happened?
It was when he started doing all his big spiel about refugees that day, and I just put, like, how, you know, he's just awful. He's so right-wing, awful. And then I just put Rishi Sunak as a cunt on Twitter, and it was the most sort of like unintelligent, uninformed thing I could have said about it, but it was the most popular tweet because it didn't. What he was saying was so awful that it didn't warrant any kind of intelligence at all. It was what that word was invented for.
Okay, before you go, I got one more question. So, you sat down and you had preconceptions about me.
Yeah.
Have they changed?
No, you're still posh, but you're nice. I didn't think you were an arsehole. I just thought you were posh. You are posh.
Yeah, I'm posh.
You're the first to admit you went on Made in Chelsea. You did that application form knowing full well it was for posh people.
The application form. So that means you like me?
Yeah, but I didn't never not like you.
Good, I'm glad. Okay. All right.
You've been validated.
Thank you very much.
I hope it's mutual.
Thank you so much.
Thank
That
you.
was amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.